Welcome to the University of Liverpool, the original red brick, the original planning school, and original research. Welcome to this planning research interview. I'm Richard Dunning and I'm joined today by Manuela Madeddu, an expert in urban design and in planning. And recently, Manuela's been doing research on permitted development rights and the impact on housing in Italy and in England. So Manuela, tell us why you did this research.
Okay, thank you, Richard. So the starting point for our research was the housing crisis in England, and the question of how this housing crisis should be addressed. So we know that this housing crisis has a cost element. There are houses in many places here in the UK are very expensive, but there is also a quality element to that, and there are housing, especially in the private rented sector, that are quite poor. So, we know that the market doesn't cater for the need of everybody, and we know that, the government has kind of stopped offering public houses as well. So there is a debate around the fact that, some building can be converted and transformed into housing. Some buildings are actually not residential. And there is, together with that, a discussion about the fact that in order for that to happen, the planning regulation needs to be loosened up. So there needs to be some deregulation in that respect. And of course, PDR discussion fits within that. So the discussion around the loosening up of rules in terms of planning rules, in terms of the conversion of building rules, that if those are loosened up, then houses can be delivered more quickly. It can be, we can deliver more housing and so on. So we wanted, through our research, understand basically what is the role of conversion, whether they can actually contribute to solve the housing crisis, and whether they can be done well and cheaply. So we look at a different country, Italy, as you said, to understand how things are going there, and how residential unit can be obtained from the conversion of office buildings.
Okay, so you contrasted permitted development rights in England with permitted development rights in Italy, both as forms of kind of regulation or deregulation to increase housing supply. What were the results of that comparison between those two countries?
So the key of this was looking at the regulation in England versus actually a form of pretty much system of regulated planning in Italy, and compare the outcomes. So we look at case studies in Italy and England. We look at 4 case studies in London, and we wanted to understand so the quality of the unit, the residential unit that were obtained from this conversion, but also look at locational attribute of the buildings being converted themselves. And we found that, in terms of location, many of these, in our cases, all the examples were located many of the examples were located in area that could potentially be problematic for the residents, because they were, mainly far from services, in, polluted area and so on. And in terms of the residential unit themselves, so the quality of the residential units, they were, I can say, all of them small flats that didn't cater for the need of family, because they were mainly one unit or studio. They had, they were mainly dark, so problematic. And a key issue with that is also that the building, the starting building, so the host building, they offer very little extractable value for developers. So basically, the role of the regulation was to allow developers to at least extract some profit from the redevelopment of these office buildings. So at the end, the aim seemed to be to make them viable for development, but that didn't mean that they were necessarily viable for people to live in. In Italy, as you can imagine, the story is slightly different. So we look at, again, 4 case studies. These were in the city of Turin and Milan, because this was a city with, a kind of a past of commercial history and industrial history. So we look at 4 buildings there as well. And in terms of the location, 3 of the 4 case studies were located centrally, so well served by amenities, services, and in that respect were good. One of them was actually located in a peripheral area, but in this case study, then they were kind of more comprehensive intervention that were needed and they were undertaken in order to then provide the resident with the services that were needed. So in terms of the quality of the unit themselves, there was an attention to the orientation of the building, for example. So in order to allow all the flats to have natural light, there was an attention to standards because there are compulsory space standards in Italy. There was also an attention to the provision of outdoor private space, so they were added whenever possible. So these outcomes were the result of regulation, because regulation basically meant that only the building that were that had the potential for good residential unit to be extracted, so only those were converted. But there was also a relevant role of design and design thinking. So architects were involved in all the case studies that we analyzed, and there was a truly desire to actually think about the organization of the space and the space that actually could be livable for people. So one of the problems, of course, in Italy is that some say there is too much regulation, and that can impact on design innovation. So if you want, there is too much regulation in Italy, and too little in the UK. But I think is the latter that is more problematic.
So are there actually lessons that practitioners can draw from this, or from planning policy, from both an English and an Italian perspective? And what are the key areas that might progress in?
So I think, probably the key lesson is that good outcomes are possible from converting office building into residential unit. The example that we had in Italy are brilliant. They're really good quality unit, livable for people. So I think that's a key lesson. But how is that obtained? That's obtained through regulation that in Italy are too not flexible enough. So I think there should be more flexible regulation. There needs to be like a conversion, if you want, a conversion framework, regulatory framework for conversions, but there needs to be also flexibility in terms of the regulation. It cannot be too rigid. But there also needs to be attention to design. Design is key. I know that I'm slightly biased in that, but design thinking on how you can make the most out of a space that maybe the starting point it can be problematic because you can have large floor plates, for example. How do you address that? That's key as well. But it is key also to understand that these things are not cheap. It can be maybe it's good in terms of sustainability to reuse the building, but it's not cheap to convert office spaces into residential units. So there needs to be an investment in terms of money. And what happened here is seems that there is not enough selection of the building that are then converted, and it seems that the ones that are more problematic in terms of typology or in terms of location are then the ones who ended up being converted. And going back to the housing crisis, if we look at what has been the result of PDR here, at the end of the day, in terms of the poor unit of many of the conversion, and the bad location sitting of these buildings, then we can say that actually the housing crisis has been worsened by PDR, and there needs to be an awareness that you need to invest money to sort this housing crisis, and that has not been done because slums are cheaper to produce.
Thank you for your time, Manuela. You can read more about Manuela and Ben Clifford's work in progress in planning, or you could contact them directly, or you could look at the University of Liverpool Planning Research Institute's website for more details. Thanks for your time,
Thank
and
you.
see you soon.